Hey everyone, ready to kind of rethink how we tackle goals? I mean, those New Year's resolutions we all make, they often fizzle out pretty quickly. Why is that? Well, today we're diving into a source that challenges how we usually think about goals. And get this, it suggests a totally different approach. So get ready, because this might just change how you approach success.
It's really interesting, right? We're so used to setting these huge goals for the entire year, like it's just ingrained in us.
Totally. But it can feel super overwhelming.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that, well, research actually shows our brains work better with shorter time frames. Think about it. Deadlines, they kind of force us to get things done, right?
Oh, yeah. Like that mad rush to finish a paper before it's due, you suddenly become the most productive person on the planet.
Exactly. And that's a key point the source we're looking at today really highlights. It suggests something called the 12-week year. Instead of one giant goal for the year, you break it down into 4 12-week cycles.
Ah, okay. So you're basically creating mini deadlines every 3 months to stay on track.
Exactly. It creates this sense of urgency, keeps you engaged, and way more motivated.
So instead of feeling like, oh, I have all year to do this, you're consistently working towards smaller milestones. Do you actually see better results that way?
Oh, absolutely. Studies show that people who set shorter-term goals are much more likely to achieve them. There's just something about that deadline that makes you take action and, well, procrastinate less.
That makes sense. It's almost like having those quarterly reports, but for your personal life. A way to hold yourself accountable and see how you're progressing.
I like that. Quarterly reports for your life.
Right. Instead of waiting for that one big moment at the end of the year, you're having these mini finish lines throughout the
Yeah,
year.
exactly. And, let's say your goal is to write a book.
Oh, that's a big one.
Right. But instead of being overwhelmed by the whole writing an entire book thing, you could use this 12-week framework. You could set goals like, oh, I don't know, finishing a certain number of chapters or reaching a certain word count each quarter.
I see. So you're breaking it down into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Yeah. It just makes the whole process seem way less daunting. And you're constantly making progress, which keeps the momentum going.
That's a great example. For someone who's been putting off that big writing project, this could be a game changer.
Absolutely. And here's another important thing the source emphasizes. Within each of those 12-week cycles, you should focus on actions, not just the end result.
Okay, so what do you mean by that?
Well, let's stick with the book example. Instead of only thinking about getting that book published, you'd focus on actions like, okay, I'm going to write a certain number of words each day, or I'm going to dedicate this much time each week to writing.
So it's less about envisioning that final book signing and more about putting in the daily work, right?
Got it. It's about shifting the focus from the outcome, which, sometimes things are outside of our control, and focusing on what you can control, the actions you take right now.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. It takes some of the pressure off.
Exactly. It puts you in control of your progress. You're in the driver's seat. And speaking of taking action, there's a framework that can help make those big, sometimes vague goals into actual steps you can take. Are you familiar with SMART goals?
Of course, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound. It's like goal setting 101.
All right. And there's a reason why it's so popular. It's not just a catchy acronym. It's a way to break down those overwhelming goals into things you can actually tackle.
So instead of just saying, I want to get in shape, you'd say, okay, I'm going to work out 3 times a week for the next 12 weeks. That makes it specific, measurable, and time-bound.
Exactly. It turns those wishes into a plan.
Yeah.
And don't forget the achievable and realistic part of SMART goals. That's key because you want to set yourself up for success.
That's a good point. There's nothing more discouraging than aiming for something completely unrealistic and constantly feeling like you're failing.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, pushing yourself, but also staying grounded in what's actually possible.
I like that. So you've got this 12-week year structure. We're focusing on actions, and we're using the SMART framework. What else should we keep in mind?
Well, don't forget, with this 12-week system, it's not a set it and forget it type of thing. You've got to review your progress, make adjustments as needed, and most importantly, celebrate those small wins.
Oh, yeah. Those celebrations are important. It's like acknowledging all the effort you're putting in.
Exactly. And that's what's so great about this 12-week system. It has those built-in moments to recognize your progress and keep you motivated. It's a recipe for, well, lasting success.
Wow. I'm already rethinking my own approach to goals. This 12-week year, it just feels so much more doable than those big year-long resolutions.
It really is. And it's not just about reaching those specific outcomes. It's about building those habits and creating momentum that carries over into other areas of your life.
Now, I'm really curious to hear more about how to put this into practice. How do we actually stay on track and make the most of those 12 weeks?
That's a great question, and that's exactly what we're going to dive into next time. We'll be back to explore some really effective techniques for boosting your motivation, tackling obstacles, and turning those 12-week goals into real achievements. Stay tuned.
Can't wait. Okay, you've sold me on this 12-week year thing. It sounds amazing. But how do we actually, make those 12 weeks count? Translate those plans into actual progress.
Right, it's one thing to, set the goals, but sticking to them, that's the real challenge. And the source we're looking at today, it actually dives into some really effective strategies for doing just that.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's say, I don't know, you're trying to get into a good workout routine. It's easy to say, okay, I'm going to exercise 3 times a week. But then life gets in the way, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Sticking to a new habit, that's often the hardest part.
Yeah.
One thing the source talks about that could really help? Positive reinforcement.
Oh, yeah, like rewarding yourself when you hit those workout milestones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about, the big reward at the end. It's about celebrating those small wins along the way. Like, did you make it to the gym all 3 times this week?
Uh-huh.
Amazing. Treat yourself to a movie night or, I don't know, a relaxing bath. It's all about connecting positive feelings with the actions you want to keep doing.
I love that. It kind of makes it feel less like a chore and more like, hey, there's some fun built in.
Exactly. And those little celebrations, they don't have to be huge. Maybe it's a new book after a week of hitting your writing goal or that delicious smoothie after a morning run. It's about finding what motivates you and making those rewards part of your routine.
Okay, rewards are definitely key. What else can we do to kind of keep that motivation going throughout those 12 weeks?
Another powerful tool, visualization.
Yeah.
Now you might be thinking, oh, vision boards, I've tried those, they don't work. But this is different. It's not just about picturing that end goal. It's about visualizing the process, the steps along the way.
Oh, okay. So instead of just imagining myself, giving that amazing TED Talk, I should be picturing myself practicing the speech, working through those nerves, engaging with the audience.
Exactly. When you mentally rehearse those steps, you're basically training your brain to actually do it. It's like creating this mental roadmap so you're familiar with the terrain, the highs and the lows before you even get there. And this is super helpful when those doubts creep in.
Makes sense. It's like giving yourself that pep talk in advance.
Right. You're mentally preparing for those challenges and seeing yourself overcome them.
Cool. So we've got rewards, we've got visualization. What about those times when you just feel stuck? You hit that wall and can't seem to move forward.
Those are the times when having a support system is super important. The source actually talks a lot about accountability partners. Having someone to share the journey with, someone who gets your goals and can cheer you on, it can make a huge difference.
It's like having a built-in cheerleader, right? And a coach. Someone to celebrate with and help you through the rough patches.
Exactly. And it works both ways.
Yeah.
You're giving support too, not just receiving it. That shared responsibility is incredibly motivating.
I like that. You're both invested in each other's success. Are there other ways to tap into that sense of community and support?
Oh, definitely. Don't underestimate the power of being around people who are also striving for growth. It could be a support group, an online community, even just a group of friends who are working towards their own goals.
Makes sense. Like having a tribe that gets it. They understand the struggles, celebrate the wins, and it's a safe space to share your journey.
Exactly. That feeling of belonging and shared purpose, it can really give you that extra boost of motivation to keep going, especially when things get tough.
Speaking of tough, let's talk about setbacks. Those are bound to happen during those 12 weeks. How do we make sure they don't derail us completely?
Setbacks. They're part of the process, right? One key is to change how we think about failure. Instead of seeing it as, ooh, I give up, see it as a chance to learn and try something different. Remember, this 12-week thing is all about being flexible and adapting.
Okay, so embracing those so-called failures as feedback and using them to tweak our strategy. Is there a specific way to deal with those moments when things don't go as planned?
The source suggests this really simple framework. It's called what, so what, now what.
What, so what, now what? Okay, I like it. It's catchy.
Right. First, you ask yourself, what happened? Just look at the situation objectively, no judgment. Then, so what? What's the impact of this setback? What did you learn? And finally, now what? What steps can you take to move forward?
That's a great way to put it. It takes the emotion out of it and lets you deal with those setbacks with a clear head.
And even if you don't hit every single goal perfectly within those 12 weeks, you're still making progress. It's about celebrating those small wins and recognizing your effort.
That's a good point. It's so easy to fall into that all or nothing thinking, but every step forward is a win.
Exactly. And those steps, they add up over time. Consistency is key. And the 12-week year, it gives you that structure to build those habits that lead to, long-term success.
This is all making so much sense. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools to use. But before we wrap up, one more thing. How do we choose the right goals to focus on in the first place? There are so many possibilities. Where do we even start?
That is a great question. And it's one that deserves its own deep dive. We'll definitely explore that in our next segment. We'll talk about how to find those goals that are truly meaningful to you, that align with your values, and really spark that inner passion. So stay tuned.
All right, so we've talked about how to make those 12 weeks really count, all the strategies and tools. But now I'm thinking, before we even jump into all that, how do we actually choose which goals to focus on? Like, there are so many things we could be working towards.
Oh, that's such an important question. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of goal setting. But if those goals aren't really meaningful to you, if they don't align with your big picture, chances are you'll lose steam along the way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure those goals we're putting all this energy into, how do we know they're actually the right ones for us?
Well, the source we're looking at, it really stresses the importance of connecting your goals to your values. What's truly important to you? What kind of life do you want to build? When your goals match up with your values, they become more than just, items on a checklist. They're an expression of who you are.
I like that. It's like having a compass.
Yep.
When you know what your North Star is, it's easier to set goals that'll lead you in the right direction.
Exactly. And when you're working towards something that truly matters to you, you're going to be more motivated, more resilient. You'll push through those challenges because, the goal is connected to something deeper.
So it's not just about setting goals that sound good or impress other people. It's about choosing the ones that really resonate with you. But how do we even figure out what those core values are? That seems kind of deep.
It can be, yeah. But it's definitely worth exploring. The source actually suggests a few different ways to kind of uncover your values. One thing you can do is think back to those moments in your life when you felt truly happy, truly fulfilled. What were you doing? Who were you with? What was it about those experiences that felt so good?
Oh, I like that. It's like looking back at those highlights and trying to figure out what made them so special.
Exactly. Another helpful exercise is to imagine yourself way down the road. At the end of your life, what do you want to be remembered for? What kind of impact do you want to leave behind? Thinking about those questions can give you some clues about what's most important to you.
Wow, that's powerful. It's like writing your own eulogy, but using it as a guide to create a life you're proud of.
Exactly. And once you have a good grasp of those core values, that's when you can start brainstorming goals that line up with them. For example, if creativity is one of your big values, maybe you set goals around writing or painting or even starting a business. If connection is a core value, you might focus on strengthening relationships, getting involved in your community, things like that.
I see. So you're using your values as filters to pick goals that will not only bring success, but also bring a sense of purpose.
Exactly. And remember, those values, they might change over time. So it's good to check in with yourself every now and then and make sure your goals are still reflecting who you are and what you believe in.
Wow, this whole conversation has been so eye-opening. I feel like I have a totally new way of thinking about goals, not just setting them, but making sure they actually mean something to me. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, just remember, you're in the driver's seat here. You get to choose the goals that will shape your life, make it both successful and fulfilling. Don't be afraid to dream big, break things down into smaller steps, and enjoy the journey.
And celebrate those small wins along the way. Because let's be honest, those are what keep us going.
Well, this deep dive has been amazing. I'm feeling super inspired and ready to take action.
That's awesome. Remember, you have everything you need to achieve those goals. So go for it. Embrace that 12-week year and start turning those dreams into reality.
Until next time, keep on diving deep, everyone.